If today's episode sparks any new ideas in you, please hit follow and leave a quick review for me. So I read every single one, and it helps us to get more eyes on all this great conversation we're having. On to the episode.
So I think it's amazing to have a consistent subject in your life that you can consistently improve on, or just, default back to when you are bored or anything like that.
Well, welcome to another incredible episode of Purpose Driven Progress. As always, I am your host, Jacob Hicks. And today, I got to tell you guys, I am really excited for you guys to meet my guest, because today I am joined by Nicole Ovrutsky, a sales leader with a unique blend of strategy and creativity and global experience. She leads teams across industries, mastered multiple languages, and developed outbound strategies that actually work. We'll dive into how language shapes business success, the keys to strong sales leadership, and the pivotal moments that defined her career. Nicole, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, so we're super excited to have you. So, kind of give us a little bit of background. How did you get to, kind of where you are today?
So I currently work at a marketing and advertising firm.
Mm-hmm.
I went to art school for fashion marketing and merchandising.
Yeah.
And then I left. And then I went to college for international business, because I said I want to do something creative, but I will never be a fashion buyer at Nordstrom's, because they only have like one or two, and I'll never get that job. I wanted to be Rachel from Friends.
Didn't we all?
And I was like, all right, slim chance. So I went back to community college for international business. And once I finished, I was like, all right, let me take a 6-month break and go do this program in Israel for living on a kibbutz, which is like a commune.
Mm-hmm.
So you work 4 hours a day. I worked in a kitchen, like 5 a.m. until 9, worked in a kitchen. And then you study 4 hours a day. And you live on the coast, on a beach, beautiful. Anyway, back to your question. So I really liked it there, and I decided to extend my visa at the time. Moved to the city, moved to Tel Aviv, which is like Silicon Valley of the Eastern Hemisphere, or was, aside from like Dubai and whatever now.
Mm-hmm.
And I started working in tech, and I worked for some cybersecurity companies. I worked for some other innovative technologies. Relocated back to the States with a company based out of Tel Aviv, left that, and then found myself here.
That I love is really been kind of just all over the world finding your place. So, tell me a little bit more about, because we were kind of talking, off air, like or are learning 5 different languages, right?
Yeah, I'm learning my 5th. Yes.
Man, that's incredible. And I'll tell you, as a, a monolinguist, like I'm just kind of barely good at English. That's just incredible to me. How has that affected, just your life in general, I guess, but like especially things like in the sales and the business world?
Yeah. So I think on a personal level, it's just a really good way to challenge myself and keep myself learning. Even like Russian is the first language I learned at home. My parents immigrated from Russia. Now Ukraine, but was a former USSR. They immigrated in the late 70s to the States. So that was the first language that I learned at home and spoke with my grandparents and my parents, and then learned English. But my point is that even with like Russian, a language that I've been speaking my whole life, there are so many words and so many ways to express yourself. So I think it's amazing to have a consistent subject in your life that you can consistently improve on, or just, default back to when you are bored or anything like that. And on a sales executive level, it's so nice to be able to communicate with people all over the world. I mean, I was doing global business, and
Hmm.
even just a few words here and there of just being able to make that connection of like, I get you and you get me, and we have some sort of like common ground. Um, and then on top of that, just being able to understand their culture and, sort of where they come from, I think it really helps um, build that base of like trust and
Hmm.
understanding, and somebody who's open to, um, really caring and being able to learn about them. Long-winded.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I love that. Well, if you don't mind, I want to run down a rabbit hole a little bit here,
Yeah.
since you are, a true polyglot, and I think you might be the first one I've ever met. So I'm really curious because, I'm a big believer. Like, I love the differences between like a denotation and a connotation when we're talking about like an individual word, right? Like for example, like the word house means like the structure you live in, right? But it can have like a connotation of like, like warm feelings, like your family lives there, and like all the memories you have, like those kind of things, right?
Yeah.
So like as somebody who has, learned, I would imagine learned the word for house in, all these different languages. I mean, just as an example, like are there like in the different languages you've learned, how does like the connotation and the denotation kind of change from like English to Russian to, Chinese to Hebrew to all these different languages you've learned?
Really good question. And yeah, good point. Um, so I definitely see a lot of similarities, and I think I saw the
Mm,
most in the last year and a half that I was learning Chinese. Of there are so
mm,
many common words, and I guess the feeling that comes behind them that backs those words of like the actual meaning of them.
mm-hmm.
um, so sorry, I got lost in my brain. Now I'm back. Um, yeah,
You're
no. So
okay.
I do see a lot of common words and meanings.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not necessarily sure how to answer your question specifically. Um, what was
Well,
it
that's
again?
okay. So I
No,
mean, I
like
would imagine that like
I got
with
lost
a
in thought of what are the commonalities between.
yeah, especially like with the connotations, because I mean, I've always figured like obviously your own experiences around like my example, right? Like a house, like if you have like really really fond memories of your family and your friends, playing in the backyard or whatever else, you have like really warm connotations. But if you know, like maybe you didn't have a great household growing
Oh,
up,
like
so maybe you have some like
associations with
negative,
the word.
yeah, because I mean
Okay.
that's really like the larger meaning behind like an individual word, right?
Yeah. Um, in that case, I think it's not necessarily the word itself, but the tone when
Mm,
saying the word or like the context of the sentence. I
sure.
think there are definitely so many words that you can choose from, but we always go to like the top like three words, top three that we use the most, just like in the human brain. And I'm not a doctor, don't quote me on that, but that's just my that's just like my opinion, man. So yeah, I think it's just people's choice or comfort with
Mm.
like the top three words. I don't know. I feel like I did not answer your question at
That's
all.
okay. Um, so I'm curious, since you learn, so many languages, for anybody listening out there, do you have like any like, great advice or, helpful tips you've discovered along the way that helped you learn a new language?
Yeah. Um, my first tip would be to do it every day, even if it's
Mm,
15 minutes. And I have come to love Duolingo.
I
Um,
was gonna ask. Yep.
it's really, really, really good for learning new vocabulary, but also don't be scared to speak. I think so many of us try to learn a new language, but the biggest fear is like, we don't want to use it outside because we feel like we're not good enough or we won't be
Mm,
able to communicate ourselves, communicate our thoughts effectively. Um, but I've come to find that people really, really, really respect people that are trying to communicate in their mother tongue or their, language of choice. And nobody minds correcting you and nobody minds being patient. And
mm.
if they can't, they won't. But like most people really like and respect people who are making the effort to learn and try. So don't be shy.
I love that. So practice consistently and go out and try it, essentially.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Don't be scared to speak. I mean, and try to like use your words in a sentence every day. That's what I do. Of like every day whatever sentence or thought that I have in English, then I'll try to say it in every language that I know.
Oh
So
man,
it's just like,
I feel like that takes longer and longer each language you learn, right?
it
Yeah.
really does. It
Right.
really, really does. But I'm also such a nerd. Like, if I don't know the word, like, I won't be able to go to sleep if I'm like, oh shoot, I don't remember how to say this word. I will not be able to sleep unless I go and look it up. I'm like,
Right.
yeah.
Do you, just out of curiosity, do you have like when you're learning a new language, like do you have like certain like vocabulary words you always seek out first, or you just kind of start with A and go all the way through?
Um, I'm not sure I'm not sure I really can answer that
Mm,
because most of the languages that I've learned, like Russian was from home, so it's just like
right.
the day to day speaking and listening to other people have conversations. Um, and then English was I was taught in school. Spanish I studied in school. So whatever the format for high school English is, middle school, high school English, I'm not really sure. But I'm sure it's like the basic, like, house, clothes, numbers, weather, all of those main like coffee talk subjects.
Yep.
And same for Hebrew. For Hebrew, it was it was more so learning the table of like how to construct a sentence, and then you can learn every word. Like, once you know how to construct a sentence, you learn every word. Um, Again, I forgot your question. Oh no.
Okay. Well, I think you answered it anyway. Another curiosity question. Just I don't know, we're just
Yeah.
talking about stuff I'm curious about today, I guess. But in like Chinese has always been like a really really interesting language because I mean I studied a little bit of Spanish and stuff. English is kind of a combination of the Romance languages and some German and things in there. But like the Asian languages are vastly different from what Westerners are used to. Like how has that been learning that particular language? Do you have any favorite vocabulary words for any particular reason?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely been a challenge.
Mm,
Um, the sentence structure of Chinese is definitely, because it's all about, it's just opposite. And I'm not even sure if it's opposite, but it's, yeah, just a different sentence structure. So
okay,
um, that's definitely been challenging. But it's like once you get the hang of it, it's not, I can't say
it's
it's
not
not
too
as
bad.
hard. It's still really hard for me.
Okay.
It is really hard for me. And there are so many words. Um, but some words have become easier to remember because they're the same in Russian and Hebrew. So like
Okay.
there are some words that are exactly the same, which is really cool.
And then it's, correct me if I'm wrong here, but to my like very limited understanding, it's like the pronunciation of words is like the tone or like the cadence is also really important in Chinese. Is that true?
Yeah. So from what I know, and again, I'm not studying it in any like school or anything. This is just self-learning.
Yeah.
So again, anything I say, take it with a grain of salt. But I think they have 5 different tones. So
Okay.
each word also has like vowels that they use with it.
Mm-hmm.
So everyone has like 3 variations, and yeah, it's
Okay. I guess
yeah.
we're just letting my curiosity kind of run away with me here a
Yeah,
little bit.
and then like within China, I think they have like 27 different dialects, like something like that. They have like a crazy number of different dialects. So I just made that number up because it's not, I think something like that. They have a ton, like a ton.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are you gonna learn
So
all of them or just gonna focus on the one?
no, no, I will like never. No,
Be doing that
probably
forever.
not.
Okay, well to rein myself back in here a little bit.
Yeah.
So I really wanted to ask you because I know you've been in a lot of different sales roles, and you've led I mean a lot of like sales teams across industries. So has there been like any like really big common denominator in successful leadership, regardless of the field or industry you've been in?
Yeah, I think the common denominator for me,
Mm,
at least, I can't really speak, can't speak for anybody else, but for me,
all right.
I really just like to make sure that I'm able to speak to everybody in the organization,
Mm,
right? Because sales has so many of their own goals and targets
yep.
that are not only challenging, but they're dependent on so many other parts of
Yeah.
the company and so many different teams and so many different responsibilities. So I think that being able to help every other team understand where we come from, and then the importance of their work in helping us achieve our goals, right? Because at times it can become, you can bicker. We always want things really fast, and
Yeah.
we have a lot of demands, and we're like running and we're talking to people. So we're like the liaison between the outside world, the product, whoever else, if you're backed by VC, if you're a private company, right? There's so many different factors of who's making decisions and who's setting goals for you.
Yeah.
And sometimes they're really hard goals and it's stressful. So how are you able to take all of that stress, right? Take that
Mm-hmm.
stress, take client feedback, take it to your, do what you need to do in sales, and then communicate that to the rest of the team so they understand, one, they can digest your crazy a little bit better.
Right. Yep.
But then they also understand, how important they are
Yeah.
to
Which
everybody's success, because it's not only sales, it's the entire company. So,
100%.
yeah, that's definitely been the most important thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, so I totally agree with you, and I think like that appreciation piece that you mentioned, I think is something that can be really easy to overlook as a salesperson or as a sales leader because like we're all driving towards our goal, our quota, whatever it is that we're pushing towards. And I mean, taking, 5 minutes to pop down to, John's office and marketing or whatever to tell him, hey man, thanks so much for getting, the leave behind or whatever to me so quickly. That definitely made all the difference in the last deal. I think that goes a really long way. And like I said, I think it's so easy to forget to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. You're spot on.
Yeah.
Everybody is like, we all sometimes we don't all work in the same office, and sometimes we're on different floors, or sometimes we're in the same office, but just,
Hmm.
remembering that everybody has, goals that are set for them, but then you have to have like a communal goal or
Yes.
a
And
communal
ultimately
respect
that's what
for,
you're all doing.
we're all
Hmm.
in it for the same success, and my success is your success, and your success is my success.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, 100%. I mean, again, that's so easy to lose sight of exactly that, where we're all ultimately on the same team. And,
Yeah.
my personal favorite, way to show appreciation when I was working in the field, I would try to go out of my way. Like if I was having a conversation with either like a potential client or like somebody internally, if we were like chatting, if somebody mentioned that, oh, my birthday is coming up on, such and such date, I would try to go out of my way to figure out what, ice cream or a little treat that they, just loved. And
No.
then I would go out and get that. I could get them like a little, just a little small portion of it and give that to them. And I mean, it's a small expense and, going out of my way to it's a little bit goes a long way to really show how much I appreciated somebody's effort.
Oh, well, that's really sweet of you. But I think the same exact way. I think it really is does, it's free to
Yeah.
put in a little bit more thought. We're all people at the end of the day, and everyone appreciates being appreciated.
Hmm.
And everyone likes little surprises. So good on you. I'm the same way. And not everyone is like, not everyone is like that, and that's fine too. But I am definitely on that same wavelength.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it's kind of like everything else in business for sure, but also in life in general. I think it comes down to how intentional you are, and like I'm a big believer in like time blocking and all that kind of good stuff. So just like finding, setting aside the time very intentionally, saying, hey, Steve's birthday is on Friday or whatever. So over my lunch hour, I'm gonna run out and grab him this ice cream that he says he loves. It's gonna take me 15 minutes, so I'm gonna set aside an extra 15 minutes for lunch so I can go out and do that. And just being very intentional and thoughtful about those kind of things. Again, it just like you said, it's not a huge amount of effort, but it goes a long way to showing everybody that their effort is worthwhile.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So something else I was kind of wondering too, because we were talking offline. You kind of mentioned it, when we were diving into your background a little bit, is how important like like you love like the business stuff, the sales things, but also a lot of the creativity. And like we were mentioning, you kind of found like a nice sweet spot where you got kind of both the sales business stuff and the creativity piece as well. So can you help me understand like a little bit more? How do you balance the two, and why do you think it's so important to have that creative aspect in the sales landscape today?
Good question. How do I balance it? I think we all have like an innate skill of,
Hmm.
balance, right? And it's not necessarily something that I consciously think of.
Hmm.
Sometimes you need to be more rigid and sometimes you need to be more fluid and sometimes you need to stick to a specific process and sometimes you have more creative space.
Sure.
Um, I think also creative for me is two different things, right? There's like the creative of like expression of self, and then there's creative of finding an alternative way to solve a problem. So I
Hmm.
think for me, that's what I really like about my job is, taking, looking at something and being able to find different ways of getting to my goal, right? Because everyone knows we have a process and we're taught the process and we know, we have to do A, B, C, and D. But sometimes there are so many um, things to be discovered if you just like zoom out um, and get a little creative.
Yeah. Well, so I'm
If that
honestly,
makes
I'm right
any
there with
sense.
you. Yeah, no, absolutely. Because like, if anybody's listened to my show much, like, I'm a really big believer in experimentation. Like, one of
Mm,
my favorite, kind of acronyms is ABE, always be experimenting, because
totally.
find like it's like A/B testing, right? Where
Yeah.
like in sales, like you can like obviously we kind of do like the same kind of thing. Like a lot of it can get kind of repetitive sometimes. So finding some new verbiage to try, or finding some like a new leave behind, or a new email type or something to send out to either prospects or current clientele to see, okay, what's getting me more traction, I think is really, really critical. And I know for me, like, I'm kind of right there with you. Like, I'm not a creative in the sense that like you're not going to find me, sitting on a hill at the sunrise, painting the sunrise. Like, that's not that's not who I am. You're not going to find me doing that. But like just finding new and innovative ways to essentially solve similar problems in maybe a better way, or a better way that either gets a better result or a better way that works better for me and how I like to work. I mean, that's like, I'm a big, really big advocate for that. I mean, how do you feel about like experimenting in the sales world?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's a challenge for all of us and for
Mm,
every business owner and for anybody that needs to communicate through email or,
mm-hmm.
not any face-to-face communication. Um, because we are limited in the sense of how we can communicate and everyone is short on time or we have like a 28-second attention span or whatever that
Yeah.
figure is. And people are used to like the day-to-day verbiage and semantics um, of how people communicate. But even for me, sometimes I'll just like email somebody a gif, a
Yeah.
gif, a gif.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whichever. Right.
Yeah, I don't know. I say Jif.
The
I
debate
like
rages
because
on.
I like peanut butter, so I think Jiffy, and then I always is it Jif or Gif?
I don't know. I
Okay,
think I
I'm like
say,
I'm confused
I,
by that.
I'm not sure. Now that you asked me that, I'm not sure which one I even say now. So, but
Mm,
yes, I love that. I mean, just, yeah, sending like a meme really quick to somebody can be. I mean, a great way to just break the tension a little bit, break the day up a little bit more.
sometimes we don't really need words, and if somebody is, it's easy to like make a face at your colleague and express yourself, right? And
Yes.
like if it, and you're just like or like whatever it might be. But then if I'm like really mad at a prospect who's not emailing me, I'll send them that like that guy waiting, like with the
Yeah.
fingers on the thing. It's like, you get it, and people are busy, but also I'm waiting and I'm expecting for you to answer me soon.
Yes.
So, so it's just like being a human being, trying to be as much of a human being through the computer.
Yeah. Which I mean, like that. There's innately a where I get at a disadvantage with that, because like if you're like texting, like anything that's like you said, like it's not face to face, you're gonna have like some struggle there, because you can't get a tone out of an email or a text. So you never really, and I mean, it's not like everybody has stories of like, I read this email this one way and I took it way sideways and now we have a problem, right? So
Yeah.
that's, I mean, 100%. A couple other questions here I got for you as we're kind of wrapping things up, but so, I mean, again, you've been like all over the world. As we said before, you've learned like a gazillion languages at this point. Do you feel like there's any like real defining, pivot point in your career at any point? Like, was it, leaving the U.S. For Israel for a while, or was it coming back to the U.S., or was there, something in between?
Good question. I think for me, what gave me the most confidence was being able to succeed and overachieve during COVID.
Mm-hmm.
I was working for a company that was doing 3D and augmented reality instances at the time.
Okay.
And I had joined them in November of 2019. And in January of 2020, we flew to NRF in New York because we weren't really doing any marketing at the time. It was, the three of us going after it. We went to NRF, came back with some leads, and then March of 2020, COVID hit. And that was definitely one of those moments of, setting aside fear and pushing forward
Mm-hmm.
and truly believing that your product can help the world. And, when I first joined, it was, a different set of deliverables that I had in my mind of, this is what we're coming to do and this is how we're going to help people. And then COVID hit and brick and mortars were closing and people were
Yeah.
losing their jobs. And like, how can I help save what's remaining in the States or, because in the States it really hit hard and they were closing. So I said, how can my product help save and affect people's lives positively
Mm-hmm.
and impactfully, and not only for the companies but for people? Like, how can we ease the pain of being stuck at home or not being able to go to a store, and how can we make them feel like they are experiencing something as close as possible to what they know? um, and that for me gave me so much motivation and pride, and just propelled me to give all of myself, not only to build up my experience as, a sales executive. And,
Mm-hmm.
I got so much experience of how to communicate with other teams and tech experience. And I learned, so much about 3D and AI and just so many new concepts that I wasn't familiar with prior to joining. But then really giving me a purpose of like, why am I, being so proud to work for a product and represent it, and truly believing in your entire being that it is helping and doing good for the world. So that's definitely one of the highlights of my career.
So I love that. Well, especially, I mean, as everybody listening knows, like, I mean, COVID was, I mean, it was a hard time for everybody, but I mean, the fact that you were able to, still strive and succeed at a high level is fantastic. So I know, like, for me in my career, COVID was it was a hard time to to get people in the door and keep people, moving and selling and buying. That's fantastic. So I love that. But, my favorite last question, as everybody listening will know, is goals. So for 2025, I mean, what's kind of the big goals you've got for you on the horizon?
Goals.
Mm-hmm.
I think my the one goal that I have for myself is to just continue to improve.
Mm.
Um, I'm not super granular, haven't thought about it in depth to define like a specific goal. Just to continue improving, to be better than I was yesterday, whether it's on a personal level or a professional level, um, and to just be honest with myself. That's my forever goal.
Yeah. Well, and that can be a tricky one for a lot of people to be actually be honest with yourself and say, hey, you're doing really, really great today, or hey, maybe you're, struggling a little bit than you were yesterday, and finding that, again, that intentionality and that grit to keep driving forward. I love that.
Yeah.
That's fantastic.
Thank you.
So Nicole, yeah, thanks again for coming on. This was, a ton of fun. So thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Is there, what's the best place for, folks to find you if they want to connect?
Hit me up on LinkedIn. Let's chat and let's be friends. Don't be shy. And if, there's any insight that I can offer you or any insight that you can offer me, I'm all ears.
I love it. Well, I'll make sure to leave your LinkedIn in the show notes so people can find you super easy. But Nicole, thank you again for joining us, and everybody listening, we will see you guys next time.